Hello and welcome to Season 1 of VajraPod Conversations, where you can listen to a father and son's conversations about life and weathering the storms that face us in said lifetime. I'm one of your hosts, Namka, or just Nam, and my co-host happens to be a neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Chuang Norsang, who I will be affectionately calling Pala because that's how a Tibetan kid addresses their dad. In our first season of this podcast, we will be focusing on topics and issues related to navigating the workplace, which we hope will be helpful for not just our younger, early career listeners, but also for more experienced folks as well. A little something for everybody kind of thing. As a reminder, our podcast is not intended to be direct ethical or medical advice, and if needed, please seek professional help appropriately. And with that, let's dive straight into episode 3, creating good work habits and avoiding bad ones. So, as the great philosopher Mick Jagger once said, old habits die hard. Well, that particular saying, it kind of does sound like a trite thing to say, but you can't really deny how habits are so ingrained in us at times, and it can dictate our very day-to-day moods, and also in the long run, kind of also the direction that we take in our lives as well, right? And, how often do we sit down at times to make a plan or a schedule, about maybe going to the gym at some point and doing all these different exercises, and how often do we actually follow through with all these plans and schedules? Most of the time we'll just fall back to our usual, habit of, snoozing, and then maybe getting up a little bit late and then watching whatever you want on your phone, scrolling through social media or doing something else contrary to what you had actually scheduled. So that's sort of a habit that gets developed in itself, right? It's a bad habit, but again, it is a habit, and it is a very powerful thing to break out of. But think about the last time you actually stuck to a good habit and you were able to successfully complete what it was that you had set out to do. Remember how happy you felt at that moment. So I think it's very important to wire our brain with these positive habits, because plans by themselves are just, lofty ideas, and it's these hobbits.
Now that we've got the hobbits out of the way.
And yeah, after a lot of editing out the laughing, but I'm sure our Lord of the Rings fans would appreciate that little Freudian slip. But yeah, what I meant to ask actually was the habits are what get the work done, right, Bala?
Yeah, well, when I think about life is all about management and organization, I think, both internal and external. And like we talked before, while we keep ourselves busy with our external management, we often tend to ignore ourselves, our own internal management. So it's really important to build good work habits, I think, early on, as you'll build a good framework, a foundation to help you navigate yourself in the workplace. And with the emphasis of today's workplace on quality and productivity, I think it's more important than ever to make sure you have a good framework on which to work from. And a habit is just a conscious routine of behavior that you repeat regularly on a regular basis, and which ultimately tends to happen subconsciously. We are all creatures of habit, and I'm sure all of us have several subconscious routines in our daily lives that help us better organize ourselves and help us in managing things better in our daily lives. So similarly in the workplace, if you consciously and willingly have a set of rules and routines to work from, it will make your life much easier.
Mm.
And I stress upon the word willing here. You have to be willing to make these changes or routines. And only then you'll be able to comfortably conduct yourself in that exercise every day. And as you look back in life, you'll notice that most of the things that you did willingly probably brought you joy or comfort.
Right.
And most of the unwilling actions, many of which were probably imposed upon you, probably did not make you happy. So if you readily accept to make some positive routines in your working life, I think you will be able to be more successful in your career. And that is a proven fact. People with good work habits do tend to be more successful in their careers. They help in getting yourself more organized, lessen your anxiety, and help you focus on what needs to be done more easily.
Okay, so now that we've established the importance of habits, let's talk about some actual actionable good habits that we can apply to our work lives. And so, what are some of your recommendations, Pala?
Now, this is mainly for people that are new to the workplace or are trying to land their first job. I think over the years, life has taught me a few good habits that have sort of helped me navigate the workplace in a less stressful way. Again, people will have their own experiences and will formulate their own subconscious routines that'll help them. My experiences have been mostly in the hospital settings and in outpatient clinics, and building some general work ethics and routines have helped me enjoy my work better. I've always thought of humility and positivity as being the primary pillars upon which you can always build good habits, work, or life.
Nice.
And let me digress for a moment here and talk about
Sure,
humility. Most of us think think of humility as having low self-esteem. It's actually not. It's having a modest view of oneself. So you neither have a low self-esteem nor a high, unrealistic or grandiose sense of yourself. So it's basically a modest view of oneself.
Right. It's a view that's closer to reality rather than
Absolutely,
anything else,
yes,
right?
yes. And staying right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And positivity, and I stress upon positivity here. There's been documented research where, positive thinking actually activates our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain
Okay.
directly behind your forehead. And once that's activated, the stress hormones go down, and the happy hormones, rise. The levels rise. And why I think positivity is important at this point in time is, as I look into the future, I think the jobs of the future will require high level thinking, with lots of creativity and better emotional intelligence. So I think staying positive is really, really important at this point in time. But again, going back to the good habits, growing up in Darjeeling in a close-knit family, the importance of humility was introduced early at home, and I'm thankful eternally for that. Always keep your feet grounded was probably the most heard of and most important lesson that I've heard growing up.
That's a pretty similar theme in my
That you
childhood
went
as
through,
well.
right?
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. So it made sense physically. If your center of gravity is low, then you are less likely to fall. But then life gradually taught me that it was actually a metaphor for recognition of my true inner self and always staying true to who I am. And once your mind accepts humility, it becomes easier to become more positive in your thinking.
Right.
You have to always remember that people tend to reflect back what you project onto them. So if people see you as being genuine, humble, and positive, they will reflect that positivity back at you. Now, as for the other general work habits are concerned, I think all of them revolve around three ideas. One is honesty, the other is reliability, and building trust. And I think these may be in any order, but the next one I would think of is planning out your day. You have to plan out your day, either early in the morning or even the evening before, and that has always helped me. It could also be the first thing that you do at work. For me, it would be the first thing at work, seeing how many patient admissions or discharges were scheduled, and I planned my day accordingly.
Yeah, I think planning out your day is a very, very crucial aspect of your day-to-day work life. We've all heard stories about how high-functioning people like Bill Gates or Elon Musk, how they manage their own times, their busy schedules, and how they manage to get their work done. And one thing that I found, that all these high-achieving people do is this thing called time boxing, where they set aside very specific amounts of time during the day and assign very specific tasks that they will complete within those allotted time frames. So again, this goes back to what is, I guess, commonly called Parkinson's law, which basically is this concept that work sort of expands to fill the time that you allot it.
Yes.
So, sometimes when you say, I'm going to finish a particular project in 2 days, you kind of tend to stretch out the whole effort for the entire 2 days, when in reality, it probably could have been done in a single day. So, but using this to our advantage, what we could do is have a specific, maybe like a 30-minute or a 1-hour time where we, commit to completing a task. And again, in this situation, Parkinson's law works in our favor, where we actually are able to expand whatever we need to do within this time frame, within reasonable limits, and basically be able to achieve what we set out to do. And I guess one more thing that I personally have used before when I was a student, especially, was this thing called the Pomodoro technique, which is basically segmenting your work time into these chunks of about 20-25 minutes, and then taking a 5-minute break in between, so a short break, followed by, again, another chunk of 20-25 minutes of focused work. And after a couple of these segments, taking a longer break, during your work day, it could be like your lunch break or whatever, and you can probably mix and match these techniques to your to your liking. So again, that's another thing that I found was very, very useful. It gives you a chance to get up from your desk, stretch out,
Right.
clear your mind a little bit. And especially for me, who works on the computer for hours and hours on end, gets me some relaxation on my eyes as well, because that definitely relieves a lot of eye strain. But yeah, those were just some things I remembered when you were talking about planning out your day. So anyways, what's next, Paula?
I think punctuality is also important. I think, making sure you're on time or even early, that helps. Personally, it helps you prepare your day, and for your coworkers and superiors, it definitely shows reliability.
Right, and I think the concept of punctuality was more pronounced when we actually went to a physical workplace every day, right? But now with a lot of us going full remote, I think this concept is kind of lost on us at times, when we kind of like wake up and roll out of bed whenever we want, and then turn on our computers and then start working, or so I think this concept of punctuality needs to be applied even when we're just working by ourselves, and not working physically alongside our coworkers as well, because at times this can turn into a bad habit where you end up having work spill over into your own personal time as well. So I think it's very important to be aware of this and still have a code of punctuality when you are working by yourself. So
That's right. I mean, punctuality doesn't, it basically means that you're going to be there when you say you will be. So that's basically punctuality.
So yeah, what anything else?
Well, once you're at work, whatever you're doing, I always want to give it my best. I think always giving it your best. And if you do this daily and consistently, I think you'll gain a lot of trust.
Right. And this also brings to mind, a lot of times growing up, and in many cultures, we have this concept of the importance of hard work in order to achieve what we want in life. But I think a lot of times what we fail to notice is that it's not just working hard that gives us results, it's working smart as well.
That's right.
So I think in this day and age, when we have access, well, a lot of us have access to the internet, and also, new technologies like smartphones and things like that. And it doesn't matter what type of work you're doing. I think there's always an opportunity to make that particular task more efficient through some form of automation or another. So that way you're not doing what you would normally refer to as donkey work, where you're not continuously doing repetitive and very exhausting tasks over and over when there's an easier alternative. For example, I know, Pala, that you use a dictation software when you're at work.
That's
in
right.
order to take notes. So again, that actually saves up a lot of your own time, and also potentially someone else's time and energy that could have been directed to a more constructive direction, I guess. So yeah, I guess using these sorts of productivity apps and things like that on your smartphones. There's always reminders, automatic reminders, calendars, and many other tools that you can explore and see what fits best for your specific work needs.
And I think just going back to that, I think working hard and working smart is important. But the other part is important as well. I mean, doing it consistently. I think that consistency will gain you a lot of trust.
Right, for sure. And it also helps, this consistent behavior also helps to ingrain these habits more and more.
That's right.
Right. So what's next, Pala?
I think choosing your conflicts, like we talked before, identifying whether the conflicts at work are personal or professional, and focusing more on resolving the professional conflicts first is helpful. It'll help you cancel out the quote-unquote noise at the workplace.
Right. I guess it's so important to realize that, it's not about winning all the small battles that actually matters, as long as you win the war. So I think one thing that comes to mind is the concept of Socrates' filter that you mentioned in a previous episode. That might actually be very useful in terms of figuring out what conflicts you want to be a part of. Just as a recap, Socrates' filter is this idea that whenever you're presented with something that can be potentially troublesome, like a conflict or anything like that, basically ask 3 questions. The first one, whether that particular conflict stems from something that is true, whether or not, and the next part is whether or not the results of that conflict will yield something good, and then lastly, whether or not it will yield something useful. So this whole
That's
idea of whether it's true, whether it's good, and it's useful, I think applies very much in this scenario of choosing your conflicts at work.
That's right. And then for me, at my place of work, I think responding early and timely was also important. Like in a hospital setting, you have a personal pager, or they could also page you overhead. And this personal or overhead paging happens often during any kind of emergencies in the hospital. So it is important for me to kind of pause what I'm doing and then try and respond to the call. In an office setting, this would be more like, I guess, responding timely to emails or answering calls. Again, this is all about building trust and reliability.
Yeah, and I think also in this case, it's important to be aware at the same time of people who might take advantage of your good habits and your responsible manner to to reap their own benefits, their own ulterior when they have their own ulterior motives behind that. So I think it's very important to be aware of these danger indications at a very early stage. And we go over this quite a bit in a previous episode, so do check that out in order to get more details regarding, drawing your boundaries and still remaining efficient at work. So, yeah, any other good habits one should have at work?
Yeah, always be accountable for your actions. I think that shows a great deal of honesty on your part. And then once in a while, finding time for yourself, either sitting in your office quietly or taking a brief stroll outside for just a few minutes and just concentrating on mindfulness has always helped. It can be as simple as just focusing and concentrating on your breathing in and out, in and out. Believe me, it helps.
Right, for sure. And, taking these moments of the workday for yourself and taking breaks is very important, not just for overall productivity, but for overall sanity as well. And this also kind of brings to mind something that I have been applying recently in my own work life as well, which is the concept of deep work. And this is something that has been popularized by a author, a professor named Cal Newport. He's also a doctor, but a different kind of doctor. He's a PhD from MIT. I believe he's like a computer science professor. And he's done a lot of research into work habits and productivity in general. So what deep work basically is referring to is a certain portion of your day when you are doing continuous and uninterrupted focused work. So that means no emails, no responding to text messages, calls, other coworkers' queries. You're just zoned in and in sort of like a flow state, completing whatever it is you are trying to complete at that point. Whether it's an assignment or it's, preparing for a presentation, whatever it is. But just being able to focus on that for a large amount of time can actually reap more productivity than, working on that same thing for hours and hours on end every single day. You can actually achieve that in a shorter amount of span when you're doing focused flow state work.
That's right.
So that's something that I've kind of tried to apply, especially in the mornings when there's, fewer people who, people haven't clocked in yet, I guess. And, that's a really, really good opportunity to be able to do some deep, meaningful work. So, yeah, while we're still on the topic of making time for ourselves, let's also talk about, I guess, the holy grail of all working people, the elusive, the mythological work-life balance. So I think, in my opinion, there's not really a one-size-fits-all solution to the work-life balance problem, I guess. And everyone has to sort of define their own boundaries between their personal and their professional lives. But I think one thing that is universal and that kind of applies to everyone is sort of the need to separate the stresses and the negative emotions that arise out of your work life, and preventing that from spilling into your own personal life. Because at that point, it's not just you who gets affected, it's those who are around you, your loved ones, who are targeted by that, by those negative emotions as well. So I think more than the traditional definition of the work-life balance, I think being able to balance our work-life emotions, I think that is a much more important thing to do in our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. I think we tend to kind of stress the weekdays and kind of live for the weekend. And I think that takes a huge toll on our emotional and other skills as well. And I think we have to understand that the workplace and out of the workplace, they're just different realms of our own lives. And then we have to balance out our emotions evenly as well.
Right. Yeah, definitely don't want to go through the Sunday night blues over and over again throughout the rest of your career. So yeah, definitely very important stuff. So now that we've mostly talked about what we should be doing in our work lives in terms of good habits, what in your opinion is the one, I guess, biggest, baddest habit, if I may say so, that's, I guess, absolutely unnecessary for any like working professional?
That's a tough one, I guess. I mean, different people will tell you different things. But if I can think of one bad habit that I see in virtually all workplaces, I think it's complaining. Some people tend to complain about everything from the location or the workplace environment to other co-workers or superiors, even the way things are run at work. Well, complaint is just an expression of dissatisfaction or annoyance about something. And all of us do it at one time or the other. But to do it all the time, to make it a habit, is one of the worst influence in trying to be cohesive environment. Not only does it spread negativity to the whole workspace, it doesn't offer a solution. And the same negative cycle repeats itself day in and day out. This only adds to the mental quote unquote noise in the environment and adds to the stress you already have. I think only a few good bosses or maybe companies who understand this and are proactive and habitually ask their employees about what the issues are that are bothering them, and then go on to make the workplace improvements. I think these are very rare. But on your part, instead of just voicing your annoyance or dissatisfaction over something, try to just politely disagree, but also try to offer some kind of positive solution. The solution may or may not work, but
Right.
at least it'll show you a positive outlook.
Yeah, I think, and all of us who have worked in any setting have probably interacted with someone like this, or probably we ourselves have indulged in this behavior of complaining from time to time, where that complaining is not really constructive. So, yeah, it's very, very important to keep check of ourselves as well. But at the same time, there definitely needs to be a distinction between that sort of complaining and then sharing your emotional burdens with someone who is close to you.
That's right.
Because in the latter case, you're not repressing certain emotions that you might be feeling, and you are working it out in a way and trying to figure out a solution that will help you deal with that particular situation better in the future. So
That's
I
right.
think, yeah, that distinction definitely needs to be made. But anything that is unconstructive, that is not going to yield any useful results, that is definitely not, that is completely unnecessary. And so, yeah, I think we have reached the end of our discussion today. And just to summarize what we talked about throughout this episode, we started off with our own definitions of what habits mean, and we delved into some good work habits that we can apply to our work lives, some of which include planning out your day, the importance of punctuality, doing your best, but at the same time working smart, not hard, and also choosing your conflicts at work and responding early and timely to your coworkers, but also making sure to be aware of those who might try to take advantage of you, and also the very important topic of taking time for yourself during the day to get the things done that matter to you the most.
That's right.
And finally, we talked about what not to do in the workplace and the primary thing that we discussed here is not to get into the habit of complaining all the time and rather engage in a more constructive form of discussion where we actually yield some results from whatever criticisms or opinions that we are voicing.
And the mantra for today would be make good habits willingly, be honest and reliable consistently, build trust, and always try to stay positive.
And one more thing about habits. Going back to my unintended Lord of the Rings reference towards the beginning of the episode, much like the fictional hobbits of the Shire, good habits can seem very small and insignificant at first, but in the long journey, they are capable of doing extraordinary things. So that's it for today's episode. I'm sure there were a lot of other questions that we were not able to address within the short span of this episode. So we encourage all our listeners to send their burning questions to us either on social media or email them directly to us at vajrapod@gmail.com, and we will work on creating a special Q&A episode towards the end of this season where we'll consolidate all your questions and hopefully answer most of them to the best of our abilities. And with that, here's the two of us reminding you to
Stay safe,
stay hopeful, and above all, keep shining. If you end up liking our conversations, please consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/VajraPod. Any support amount will go a long way in helping us to produce quality content and also work towards creating exclusive content for our donors in the near future. So show your support by buying 1, 2, 3, or 100 digital beverages for our podcast at buymeacoffee.com/VajraPod. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us on social media at VajraPod, VajraPod, so that more people can join in on these conversations. Also, check out our website at VajraPod.com for show notes and more. All these links will be included in the description. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.